As you can see, there's been a rather dreadful accident. A father and son are badly injured and rushed straight to the hospital. The boy requires emergency surgery immediately. But, just as they wheel him into the operating theatre, the surgeon freezes, turns pale, and says, "I can't operate on this boy. He's my son." Hold on a tick, right? You're likely thinking, how is that even possible? His father is injured and out cold, yet the surgeon is refusing to undertake the operation on his own son. Right, your mind likely starts racing through all the various scenarios and every possible option to deduce what is going on here. Perhaps you've thought to yourself that he is a stepfather and the child was adopted, or some proper far-fetched tale like a ghost story, or even something quite mad like a kidnapping. Your brain is properly struggling to solve the riddle, going through every possible permutation just to connect the boy, father, and doctor together and find any link whatsoever between the father and the surgeon. We just focused on that side of things, but the answer was right there in front of us. The surgeon was his mum. So what's actually going on then? Why did some of us find it a bit of a stretch to think the mother was the surgeon? Even though we all know plenty of top-tier female doctors and surgeons, some of us have likely even been under the knife with them. What's the deal here? Why did our minds just get stuck in this trap, trying to find a connection where the surgeon is the father? Basically, the simple answer is that it's just cognitive bias, which is to say, a thinking system error. But here we are talking specifically about implicit stereotyping, or implicit bias. It happens because we're constantly trying to box people in based on things like their gender, race, or age, and we begin making assumptions. In simple language, based on our previous thoughts and experiences interacting with certain people, our minds unconsciously try to categorize them into tables and assign them some kind of attribute. So later, when we meet someone, our minds unconsciously check the new person, find the closest option in that data, and immediately pass judgment. Right then, let's test yourself, like with this photo. Check it out. If I asked you which one of this lot is the proper tech genius, the real expert, who are you picking? Likely that is the person you've chosen, but why? You don't have any extra data besides their style, so why did you choose this one? The answer comes from the table we have in our mind. Glasses, messy hair, that sort of thing is the kind of label for someone in computer science. Also, imagine a bodybuilder as a developer. If it is not impossible, it's certainly tough. But there is no evidence to suggest the other person here could not be a computer nerd. Okay, now the question that can pop up is how we get stuck in the trap of implicit bias. To understand it, we need to first go deeper into our mind's function and find out how our minds work. According to Daniel Kahneman in his book Thinking Fast and Slow, our brains operate using two different layers, which he called System 1 and System 2. First, System 1. Have you ever noticed how your mind just snaps right into an answer? No effort, no pause? Exactly, this is System 1. It operates fast, is automatic, and is emotional. Basically, System 1 governs everything that requires an immediate, rapid response. Something like riding a bicycle, or having a normal conversation with a friend, or even when someone asks you, what is 2 plus 2? But then, on the other hand, we have System 2. It is entirely different. This is the slow burn, the strategist. It's the part of you that kicks in when you're deep in a game of chess or staring down a complex math equation. So basically, it is a deliberative system that is slower and requires significantly more effort. If we consider System 1 as something like a library, which is perfectly organized, hushed, and efficient so you can find that book on history or philosophy almost instantly, System 2, conversely, is like a messy puzzle spread across a table. You're picking up every individual piece, squinting at the edges, trying to find where it fits. Okay, what is the point of these two layers of the mind regarding implicit bias? First of all, implicit bias is driven by System 1, so basically it is a System 1 failure. But something that needs to be clarified here is that System 1 is not something bad, or basically an error in essence, just because it is fast or emotional or makes this kind of error. Actually, it is quite the opposite. This is one of high value mind evolution through the centuries, which helps us to achieve faster action and reaction. A picture of living without System 1 is exactly like a nightmare. From flipping a light switch when you wake up in the morning morning, brushing your teeth or tying your shoelaces, even something like you never think about, like chewing and swallowing food. So basically, it is not a bad thing at all. The problem arises when we use System 1 instead of System 2. As I said, implicit bias happens when our mind has created a table and put all the attributes there for any single person based on our experience. For example, if we have been faced for the first time with one person belonging to one specific ethnic group and they've done something good or bad, that would be our data based on that interaction. And sometimes the data is categorized based on other people's interactions and shared with us. So this table is exactly like a library for easy access. Let's imagine this. You go to the library and pick up a random book in one segment without checking the book, because you are thinking all the books here are sorted correctly. When you check the book, you find out it is the wrong book and belongs to another segment. So basically, the flaw isn't that System 1 is broken, it's just prioritizing speed over accuracy. System 1 loves shortcuts. When faced with a complex question like, is this person a good coder, it substitutes it with an easier question. Does this person look like a coder? If our mental library is stocked with stereotypes, System 1 grabs the wrong book and jumps to a conclusion before System 2 even has a chance to wake up. Let's check this with another example. During the 1970s, nearly all major orchestras in the US were predominantly composed of white men. When people asked why, their answer was simple: we just hired the most talented. Of course, we cannot ignore the part that was kind of discrimination there, but the reality was they believed that white men were better musicians, and they were selecting the most skilled performers, so they took them. But eventually, after many voices were raised, they decided to address this and silence all criticism. So they introduced blind auditions. The musicians would perform behind a curtain and be judged only by their performance, hiring people based solely on their musical ability rather than their appearance. The result was completely different from what they expected. Many women and people of color were able to pass the assessment, and the demographic structure of orchestras began to shift dramatically. In 1970, women made up barely 5% of top US orchestras. By the late 1990s, thanks in large part to these blind auditions, that number had surged to around 25%, proving that a simple change in the system could bypass our implicit biases. So one simple change made a big difference. So the very vital question here is how we can immune ourselves from this bias. Simply being aware of your biases is not enough to stop them. You must build systems that check your blind spots. First indicator: when you or other people use words like always, never, 100%, or immediately dismissing people as idiots, genius, and so on. These are red flags. We can consider it as something being wrong here, relying on lazy generalizations instead of objective truth. So in this case, step back. System 1 prioritizes speed and energy efficiency. You must consciously force yourself to pause and engage your deliberative, logical mind. For high-stakes decisions, do not trust your gut. Using double vision. Implicit bias often stems from the lazy tendency to classify people solely by their group identity, essentialism. To combat this, adopt double vision. Acknowledge the cultural group a person belongs to, but simultaneously view them as a completely unique, never-to-be-repeated individual. Last but not least, increase your exposure to diversity. Biases such as the cross-race effect, the tendency to more easily recognize faces of your own race, occur simply because we lack exposure to different groups. You can actively mitigate these implicit and conscious biases by intentionally seeking out multicultural experiences and increasing your daily exposure to diverse faces and viewpoints. I hope you enjoyed this clip. For more videos, please do subscribe to us.